So good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 10th of July, 2024. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures or share on social media during the meeting. However, can I ask everyone present to turn your mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There's no fire test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll all leave the building through the side doors and use the external fire escape to the car park. If the meeting lasts for more than 2 hours, we'll adjourn for a short comfort break. So we are pleased to welcome Tracy, Tracy Stevenson, the chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association, as an observer. You're very welcome, Tracy. You're welcome to take part in the debate on all of the reports on today's agenda, but you do not have any voting rights. So the first item on the agenda is the notification of the chair and vice chair for 2024-25. So this is to note that I, Councillor Anna Bradnam, have been appointed as the chair of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee, and Councillor Philippa Slatter has been appointed as the vice chair for the municipal year 2024-25. And these appointments were made by the Children and Young People's Committee on the 25th of June 2024. So item 2 is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. So are there any apologies to report, Rishenda?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Sharp.
Thank you very much. And members, does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest to declare? No. Right. Thank you very much. If anything arises that makes you suddenly think you might have one of those, just do say it at the time. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of March and the minutes action log. So firstly, are members happy to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting on the 20th of March? Agreed? Okay, great, super. And are there any questions on the minutes action log? And I'm looking at Councillor Hay because you often have items to raise. Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any items? Thank you. Thank you very much, Rishenda, for keeping our eyes on the ball on that one. So item 4 is petitions and public questions, but we haven't received any this month. Item 5 then is the first substantive item on the agenda, and that is the participation report. And we're joined by Helen Love. Thank you. Who is the Service Manager, Quality Assurance, Participation and Independent Visitors. And she will briefly introduce the report. Thank you very much, Helen.
Yes, good afternoon. This is the participation.
Sorry, Helen, could you just move your microphone a little bit nearer so we can.
Hopefully that works.
That's
now.
lovely. Thank you.
Excellent. So yes, Service Manager for Quality Assurance, Participation and Independent Visitors, and this is the participation report. Members will have read the report, so briefly it covers our involvement and attempts to engage young people to seek their voice and inclusion in terms of service development and other activities. Key pieces of work for that include the Children in Care Council, the Voice Group, which is for our care leavers. We also have a couple of we have a youth club up and running, and we're about to launch a second of those opportunities for young people in a different locality. We also have our young recruiters who've been particularly busy in this period, and young trainers involved in foster carer training delivering as well. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Helen, and thank you very much for all the work that the participation team do to engage with our young people and to provide them with interesting and engaging things to do. So, members, has anyone any questions for Helen? I don't actually think I have. So with that, Councillor Slatter?
Yes, it's more an observation, really. I welcome that it's more than the fun and games that we see. The participation group is usually a team I'd introduced when we go to the awards, and but there's a lot more to it than that, and that is good. And we saw that at the informal subcommittee, where we have young people coming in, and if they are being introduced to the idea of where they fit in and where we fit in and where the different offices and their responsibilities, let alone, how their foster carers fit in. That is great. And, always age appropriate. Must be quite tricky. Easy to give them too much information at the wrong period, but I'm glad we got the skilled people involved in that. Thank you.
The one thing I did want to ask was, are you happy that the sequence of events happens in a functional way? In other words, that you're able to engage. So I don't know whether this happens, but I'm hoping that people are looking forward at the forward agenda plan and seeing what's going to come onto our agenda next, and then taking that in advance to the Children in Care Council and asking them what their views are and if there's things that they would like us to consider under those headings. And then that's working through what was informal, but the young people's meeting, and then this meeting, so that we can then take it, if there are budget implications, we can then take that to Children and Young People's Committee. Are you confident that it's happening in that way?
So we're continuing to develop that. We're aware that we want as many young people as possible to be included, not just those who have stepped up to be part of the Children in Care Council. So we're looking at ways to widen our consultation with young people as well as with Children in Care Council. Obviously, the next topic coming up is education, which will be of interest to all of our young people. And we are going to hold some consultation events during the summer holidays, which gives us some more flexibility and availability for young people to be engaged in that, to look at the reports coming out from our virtual school, and to ask about what's important to them, and then bring that to the young people's corporate parenting meeting, which is continuing to develop as well. And we're looking to have some joint chairing with young people going forward. So good times.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Yes. And that's it. But I think, given that young people in care are often much more engaged with the administration of their childhoods than other children, I think it's really important that they also feel that they have a real function to play in that process, and to help them to understand how to make their contribution and make their voices heard. I think it's really important. It's sort of almost like the fundamentals of the democratic principle, so that they feel engaged with their own arrangements that are being made for them. So thank you very much, Helen, for your report, and thank you for the work that you're doing with our young people. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 6. Sorry, before we do, on that one, we've been asked to note the report and raise any queries with lead officers, which I think we've done. So item 6 is the Corporate Parenting Monthly Performance Report, which will be introduced by Ranjit Chambers, who's the Service Director for Fostering, Adoption and Corporate Parenting. So Ranjit.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. So Sally is going to present the scorecard today.
Okay.
It's been completed in a slightly different format to how it's usually presented in the committee meetings, and we welcome any feedback, and we're happy to have a meeting outside of this forum to discuss if there's any changes required that would be more helpful for how we share that information with your good selves.
Thank you very much.
Sally, over to you, my dear.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I have shown the slides on the screen, but I will not be taking you through each one, just some highlights in there. So starting with our overall figures for children in care. So despite an increase in October, have been fairly consistent in numbers in the last 12 months. So we have 48 per rate of 10,000 in Cambridgeshire, compared with an Eastern Region rate of 51.9. Okay, moving on to long-term placement stability. So this continues to improve. So we're at a 72% rate of children who have been in their current placement for more than 2 years and have been in care for more than 2.5 years. Okay, our initial health assessments completed on time. So in the last quarter of 23-24, that has increased significantly. And if I just show you, sorry, a different view on my screen at the bottom, you can just see there that significantly increased from the previous quarters that we have been recording that data. Our review health assessments continue to be consistently high. So you can see in the smaller charts around about January, that increase has continued to level out at the same percentage, more or less. Okay, our dental checks carried out within the last 12 months. Again, we had a significant increase in January of this year, and that increase has been consistently maintained since then. Our immunisations. So you can see here, these are immunisations for our entire children in care population, and we're about to change that measure so that we're in line with the DFE measure, which is for children who have been continuously looked after for 12 months or more. So with the statutory return for children in care that we've just submitted, our figure was 87% of children that had up-to-date immunisations. So this measure will change in time. A new measure that we've included are our children in care and whether they attend a school that's rated good or outstanding by Ofsted. So you can see we've been consistently high in the last 3 terms with this, and I think there's only 3 children of our school age population that don't attend a school that's good or outstanding. Okay, so our children missing from care on the left-hand side of this visual. Since February, there's been both an increase in children missing from care and the episodes. So a child can have more than 1 episode in that month. That's why the numbers are different. And then finally, our care leaver cohort. So we're looking at how we measure our care leaver cohort to make it consistent across all reporting platforms. So these are statistics from the latest 903 looked after children's return. So the blue line is us in Cambridgeshire, and the reason why we don't have this year's stats for England and our statistical neighbours is because we don't have access to their return data until October. But we can see that 51% of our care leavers aged 19 to 21 are in education, employment or training. The same cohort, 89% of those are in suitable accommodation. And at the bottom, 5% are in higher education.
Thank you very much indeed. So, excuse me a moment. I'm just going to turn this off a second. Thank you very much, Sally. So can we first of all take comments on the content of the report, and then we'll come to the format in a moment. So did members have any questions? Councillor Boulat?
Thank you. And it's good to see some of those indicators improving. I want to ask specifically on the dental checks, because it's good to see that some of this has been improving. And I know we have been discussing this particular area a lot in previous subcommittees. My question is, like, what has changed to enable this improvement? Have you seen any positive changes in terms of how appointments are made, for example, or how dental practices are working with the council? Or, yeah, I'm just curious what has changed to enable this improvement. Of course, it's still not on target, but you can clearly see there's, yeah, it is improving in the papers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sally, do you want to?
Would we
or
have a
do-
brief-
Yes, certainly,
Okay,
Ranjit.
so can I just come in and say thank you for the question? Over the last 6 months, we've done a very deep dive, and Catherine Isaacs, that's sitting next to you, has been instrumental in taking this forward for the service. We've examined every child's circumstances where we believe that there have been lots of different variations of how the improvement has emerged. We have worked very closely with the health department to access appointments for those children that haven't been able to access appointments. And there's just been a really deep dive into how we can improve this key performance indicator, most importantly, how we can make sure children have dental treatment timely. So that's kind of been the change. There's been a real focus on it. Moving forward, we have quarterly meetings arranged with health, so we can continue to review all our children in this cohort and ensure that they are receiving a dental treatment timely. Where children are placed out of borough and there's been some complications in trying to access appointments, we've escalated, and then we've been able to access an appointment through the help of our colleagues.
And I'm aware that quite a big exercise was done with your encouraging officers to contact GP surgeries and remind them of their obligations to our children in care. So thank you very much to the officers, because I know a lot of work went into calling up all of the local GP surgeries and dental surgeries to try and get them to remember our children in care, even if they are outside the county. So really important. I had a question on numbers, and I'm looking at the graph on page 20. It says 23 of the report with 25 of our agenda. Number of children in care. And I just wondered, is that a normal pattern that we get more children in care over the winter months and fewer coming in, or fewer in total over the summer, or is that just coincidental? It's this report.
Sally, do we have last year's data? Okay, is that something we can bring back or share for the next meeting? Because that would show the patterns, wouldn't
It's
it?
just, I was just wondering whether it was a regular pattern, or I mean, for example, I suppose I'm concerned that it doesn't reflect something about when we're choosing to take children into care. So say, for example, if we had made a difference in our policy about when we took to take children into care, that might reduce the total number. Or it might be that we're enabling the older young people to move on into other forms of care that don't come under these numbers. Just wondered, is there something?
I think there's a variation. I think knowing when children are going to come to care is very circumstantial.
Yes.
And that's kind of managed by Raoul Bertrand, who is our service director for targeted support. That said the journey of a child begins at the front end of the service. So maybe Raoul might be able to comment more on that.
I think it's possible Sally might have something.
And Sally, you may have something that you may want to add on that as well.
I don't have any analysis
fine.
now, but it's something that we could produce fairly simply to look at that, and perhaps look at the ages of children and when they become looked after, or maybe separate out the US population from the main population and see if there's any disparities there as well.
Very much. And the other thing I wanted to observe is the data on placement stability. We report on, this is on page 27, we report on the children in care with 3 or more placements in 12 months. And what I was ruminating on was the fact that this isn't, so let's assume having lots of placements is a bad thing because we want children to be stable. But the other side of that coin is it's important that children are with appropriate and suitable placements. And it might be that it took 1 or 2 foster placements to match the child or young person with the right fostering arrangement. And so I did wonder whether there was any opportunity for the officers to provide us any narrative around that. You know, because it would be wrong to just assume that lots of changes was a bad thing if actually it meant that finally the young person is with a foster carer that where it suits the foster carer and it suits the young person.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. So we have produced a report, but unfortunately we're not able to share that today. But Catherine Isaacs and one of our service managers have done a very detailed piece of work examining exactly that factor. When children change placements, the rationale for why that placement change has taken place, and sometimes there's some very positive reasons. So the report will come to the next meeting. But Catherine, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, to share on any specifics, because I know there's a very detailed report that's being completed to cover all those key issues that you've raised today.
Do you have anything to?
All I would add is that in terms of short-term placement stability, that will account for a range of age of children. So if you think of very young children coming into care proceedings, coming into a placement, they might live with their parents in a residential assessment unit, then move to a supported placement with their parents and then return home and still be on a care order. So that would still count as 3 moves. So sometimes it's very positive moves. Sometimes it's that we have young people at the other end of the spectrum who are 16, move from their foster placement to a high support provision, and then nearly, when they're 17, move to a less supported. So it's a whole spectrum of reasons. So we've done some detailed analysis. We will bring it to the next meeting.
Thank you. That would be great. And Councillor Slatter.
Yes, I was going to pick up on exactly the same point, because having picked up from the informal meeting, that the report to the informal meeting, where some of the young people themselves were saying change isn't necessarily a bad thing, and the word breakdown is a little bit fierce. My question really was, is this number 3 or more different placements in the last 12 months, is that something given to us from another organisation, or would you like to phrase it differently? As Catherine says, it's more a matter of how has it gone on during the whole life of the child in care. I can see a good reason for 3, and I don't know whether that is why I don't know, it's a good thing necessarily to pick it up on above 3 instead.
I think it may be a statutory requirement. Yeah, Ranjit, did you want to speak
So
to that?
it's a national indicator that we're expected to report on.
So I can't see any other questions. So the only thing I wanted to raise was that you'll be aware, members, that this is a rather different format compared to the previous version. I have one printed out. Forgive me, my printer isn't printing blue at the moment, so the colours aren't quite right. But you remember this format where we had the front sheet and then we had a quadrant on each of 2 sides. So the first side covered the headline figures, numbers of children, and then service standards and homes. And then the second sheet covered education, health, missing and adoption, and care leavers. So I just wondered, members, this format gives more detail, and I believe has been drawn up in this format because it more closely aligns to the data that the service is required to produce for national reporting. I believe, and I wanted to ask officers, I wanted to ask members whether you like the reporting format that we've got in the current agenda, or whether you would like to revert to this dashboard that we had before. And in fact, this is the one that was from July last year. So, in principle, some of these things that we're seeing on these reports should be comparable. I just wondered whether you had any thoughts, members?
I actually preferred the earlier layout. I felt it was easier to read, and it told you more.
Thank you. Councillor Boulat?
Yeah, I also prefer the earlier format. It was easier to follow as a summary, as an overall picture. Although sometimes if we go into a deep dive on a particular issue, like let's say health assessments or dentists, it might be worth having more detail of the report. But as an overview, I feel the earlier format was much better.
I think there's actually a place for both, but it may be a very intense, it may a lot of officer time involved, because it was actually really useful. I found just that first table right at the beginning really useful, because it answers some questions that you can't possibly answer in here, but you might have raised either yourself or a resident asks you, in terms of the age of the children or something like that. Very easy to go back to that and get the answer. So if these come from what you've given us now, then there is an argument for having both, but not burdening all the councillors with them. These are really quite useful to share with other councillors who haven't been involved in the detail, or even residents who are concerned.
Yes.
So I'm afraid there's a case for both, really.
Well, okay. So what I'm mindful of is way back when I first joined the council back in 2017, we were reformulating the corporate parenting subcommittee at that time. It had had a different format before. And at that time, the senior officer said, well, what data would you like to come to the committee? And we said, well, what can you offer us? And she said, well, I could give you something on this, on that, on health, on education, on movement. And we said, yes, please. So we said, could we have a little bit of everything in a standard format so that we can look at it? And then if something triggers a question from us, we could then ask you to go into more detail. So can I should have asked at the outset, would it be possible, because this all comes from the business intelligence unit. So I'm just wondering, would it be possible to produce this format again?
Yes, yeah, that does come from the data that we're showing, and we produce this data every month for the service anyway, so it's not a big onerous task to do.
Great. So I think certainly the four of us would very much appreciate having that same format again. And if you wanted the sort of template, this one was from July 2023. So it actually is quoting data from May 2023, but this is the general, it's just an Excel template as.
Yeah, I have access to that on my network.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. However, the data is interesting, and I suppose what might happen is that if one of us reads the scorecard and wants for more information at the committee, we might then say, would it be possible to provide us more detail on that, so that then you're prepared for it when you
Yes.
come, or whoever the officer is, if it isn't you, comes to the committee prepared to answer that question. I think that would
Yeah.
would that be a reasonable way of going ahead?
That would be helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I haven't got any further questions on that data, but thank you very much indeed. And I just wanted to say that what this data shows us is that many of our indicators have improved and are gradually improving since last year. So I'd like to thank Ranjit and your team of officers for working so hard to improve things for our children in care. So thank you.
I was just going to add, and especially the add-on where you've been able to say that in the financial year, they're even better in terms of page the 66 and page 27 and page 29, forget the other one, but it's the health and health assessments on time. Great. When it says all, I like that.
Okay then. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Sally. So item number 7 is the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association report. And I'll ask Steve Costman, the Head of Service for Fostering, to briefly introduce the report. And then I'll ask Tracy Stevenson, the Chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association, if there's anything you'd like to draw to our attention. So it's good that this is produced in a collaborative way.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm pleased to share today the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association report. I am, aren't I? There's always one. I'm pleased to share today the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association report, which has been completed, as you say, in partnership with the Chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association, Tracy Stevenson. The way in which the report is compiled is through identification of the key issues that impact foster carers the most, and a requirement upon the service to respond to those issues formally for the consideration of this committee. I'd be very pleased to go through each element of the report if that's helpful for the committee, or can nod to the general tone of the report. What would be most helpful?
I think, would you like to just give us a brief outline?
Certainly. The report takes a similar tone as to previous reports that have been submitted. The first issue within the report talks the matter of passports, which have been raised by foster carers as quite an onerous and frustrating matter, which can impact upon children in care enjoying leisure time with those in which we are offering as close to a normal family life as we can possibly provide. I'm pleased to report to this committee that actually quite considerable work has been undertaken in partnership with the Children in Care and Safeguarding Service on this matter, and a paper has been written which will be submitted to the Directorate Management Team in late July. The paper recommends that passports are applied for at the point of the first child in care review, and that those are tracked successfully by the service managers. This should seek to ensure that all children have a passport in a timely way, and that important festivals can therefore be honoured and children can go on holiday as well. The second matter is in relation to transport. Now, I believe that Tracy will make her own representations on this matter as well. We have sought to progress some of the concerns raised to us by foster carers in relation to transport to and from school, and at times to children's contact. There are procurement issues which impact upon a more flexible approach, which enables foster carers to contact taxi companies in the morning, for example, should a child not be able to go to school. I have not provided a response from the transport service to this panel because unfortunately I received the response within 5 days of this committee, and therefore it wasn't appropriate to submit it. I am happy to provide that response, which in effect acknowledges some of the procurement issues again, and some of the issues with providing information to that service, which does not support foster carers talking to that service directly. Having met with Tracy yesterday morning, I'm aware that it may be that Tracy would like to make her own observations on that. However, I will continue for now. The next matter is in relation to children's savings, which of course is incredibly important. And given that in our last report, we acknowledged that many children have at least 3 moves, we want to ensure that the allowances and savings collected by children follow them on their journey without risk of loss. So the Service Director of Adoption, Fostering and Corporate Parenting has taken the first of 2 papers to the Directorate Management Team, making recommendations for clear savings that are received by children, whether in an in-house fostering placement or within an independent fostering placement. So that first element is completed. Ranjit herself will acknowledge that there is a second element in which we are seeking to improve a uniformed finance system to allow those payments to follow the children and for potential at source payments to be made. So there has been progress on this issue. What we are, when I talk about at source payments, what I'm saying is that rather than a foster carer receiving an allowance and having to make an independent saving for that child, which may not follow that child as it was set up by the foster carer, by holding that those savings as a local authority, we can ensure that children's savings are protected, irrespective of any placement moves. So that is the intention and vision of the service. The next matter was about emergency payments in general, and the service has updated its emergency clothing payments and emergency equipment payments. What we are, however, wanting to do is provide by the end of September a very clear financial guide with every single payment that a foster carer may be entitled to, or any special guardianship. And at the moment, many of that information is quite disparate and all over the place, and we just need one very smart financial guide. So we are currently working with that within the service. The CFCA raised an important matter around the finance issues impacting upon carers. It is clear within the national minimum standards that fostering services should provide an allowance which can be determined between the carer allowance and the child allowance. Now, unfortunately, when the previous foster care allowances were established, the authority decided not to adhere to that, and it is not as simple as making a stern recommendation about how carers should therefore allocate their allowances. What has been agreed, however, by the service is that we will enter into a consultation around foster care allowances, as we are obligated to do so by law, to ensure that we remain both competitive against the independent sector, that carers are being fairly remunerated, and that allowance is very clear as to what is directed towards the child and what is directed towards the carer. That piece of work will start within September and October in consultation. It is a large piece of work that will require careful delivery and construction. And I will be pleased to update the committee about that as we go along. The matter of children's files, there have been some improvements in terms of providing good examples and logs to carers, but we still need to provide training along with that, and making sure that carers have the most helpful information available at the placement planning meetings. The service provides, in relation to online safety, quite considerable and increased training, which includes both one-to-one support on the matter of online safety, as well as a specialist that has been appointed to deliver these training sessions on how to help carers navigate the various risks on social media. I think those are the most significant elements of the report. The report also acknowledges the work completed by the retention working group, and Tracy and I were meeting earlier this week, went through some of the most recent minutes of the retention working group. I am seeking to communicate with members of that working group to see if any improvements that can be made, and ensuring that they're heard at a high level, and that we're able to track that rather than being led by more operational staff. I think there's a way in which we can improve the system around that. At this point, I think that's what's helpful to share.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's helpful to have it elucidated to us. So, Tracy, is there anything you would like to add as chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bradnam. The report now is a very collaborative working one. I work with Steve and other service managers to produce this, so it is very much a view of foster carers with the response from the service, which obviously previously, as you know, it wasn't quite that way. As far as some of the items on here, I think the biggest one for in this report for foster carers is to do with transport. I met with Steve yesterday. We had quite a long meeting yesterday. And transport is a big issue for foster carers. We need to make sure our children get to school, get to their family time. And if a foster carer has multiple children, for example, in multiple schools, if they're not from the same birth family, that could be multiple family time arrangements. You can't be in two places at the same time. So transport is very important to ensure that all those young children and young people are treated the same. The problem we have is that the transport department will not talk to foster carers. Everything has to go through the children's social worker. They won't even respond to supervising social workers. That's the fostering social workers. Because of the impact on budgets, because of the cost codes required, it has to go through that side of the service. And I personally have had situations where my children have missed out on transport because the social worker didn't provide the budget code in the appropriate time frame. It shouldn't come down to budget codes. I understand it's an expensive business, but children need to be at school on time. If they've got family time, they need to be at family time in a timely manner. We need to know that they're being collected, that they're safe, they're everything. So there are a number of issues to do with transport that, and it's a never ending problem. It seems to come up. It's worse in about August, September time, because the contracts are reviewed every year. Again, I completely understand why the contracts are reviewed. From a financial point of view, they need to be sure to be the best possible cost. But what happens is if there are any changes, we can't get hold of people. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, when you're meant to be waiting for a taxi and there's no taxi, and your child is getting upset, and you're having to think how you're going to get them to school, and you've got 2 other children sitting there waiting to go to school, it's not an acceptable situation. And I'm disappointed at the response by the Transport Service. So I would appreciate if that could be escalated.
And can I just come back on that point? I guess that's particularly stressful because children might be going to a new school in September. Yeah, okay. Was there anything else you wanted to raise on the report?
I think just going back on transport, there are ways to be a bit more creative around this that doesn't necessarily involve the local authority and the public purse. One thing that Steve and I were talking about yesterday, I've suggested that whilst it won't be appropriate for all foster carers, there will be foster carers who could potentially transport their young people to school, maybe making the use of before and after school clubs so that the timings don't clash with other children that they may need to get to and from other places. It's always going to be the best possible option for foster carers to transport children. But if you're expecting a foster carer to transport a child to a school an hour away, that's not feasible. It's just not practical. So I understand that taxis are necessary, but I think perhaps there will be foster carers who perhaps would be prepared to do that transportation if they were appropriately remunerated. And that would be an awful lot cheaper than paying a taxi, and much more preferable for the young person because they're with somebody they know, who can respond if they're ill or need an after school club. You're not having to constantly battle against trying to find the right person to contact to get those things in place. So I think there are creative ways to look at it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a taxi every time.
Thank you. That's really useful. Councillor Slatter.
Yes, thinking to that and not being sure of all the facts, it does occur to me, though, that there are flexibilities built into the education transport system, whereby sometimes there are families who have a right to a school that is further away than they can easily get to, and there are ways in which they can fund a taxi or share a taxi or be remunerated for the petrol that they use in driving the child themselves. I would hope that whoever in the transport department is dealing with this, with you, Stephen and Tracy, will be aware of any research that's going on or any direct payment systems that are open to other children. We certainly wouldn't want our children in care to be unable to do things that the other children can do. If it's a matter of trusting foster carers as much as we trust other parents, then clearly that can't be a contest because you're already well established. And I think if it's a matter of trusting you and your judgment, I would hope that wherever we can, we will, because you clearly understand the pressures on the public purse as well as anybody. But if it's a matter of trusting and being a bit flexible, and trying things out, I would encourage officers to do as much as they can along those lines, especially if you find that there are other officers researching it in terms of the education transport team. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just come back to you, Steve? You said that your verbal update was that the Transport Service had said it wasn't happy to be contacted. So what does a foster carer do if the taxi doesn't turn up? I'm just trying to think, how does it actually work in practicality? You're sitting there waiting for a taxi to turn up to take your child, maybe cross county boundary, what do they do? Does the child just miss school if in that situation? Is there any flexibility given to foster carers that they're allowed to take the child to school and be remunerated for that?
The matter of flexibility, Chair, is possibly less significant than the pragmatic arrangements surrounding that child. So as a parent myself, I will wake my son up in the morning at times and know that he is not well, and I have to make a decision at 7 o'clock in the morning as to whether or not he is or is not able to go to school. This is the same challenge faced by all foster carers effectively, that absolutely that need to be able to make arrangements for that taxi rather than wasting money for that and time for that taxi driver to come and pick a child up, causing further confusion. From a service level perspective, should a carer decide to transport that child to and from school, that is not discouraged. I think there is a conversation that I know that we had yesterday around how effective remuneration may look like in those circumstances if a carer is going above and beyond their role. I think the part of the challenge is that the issues that have been raised by Tracy on behalf of foster carers are both serious and haven't seen improvement in at least a very short amount of time. And there is no confidence, I feel, that without an effective plan that there will be an improvement. So whilst the CFCA effectively set the agenda for this report, and rightly so, how we get to the next committee meeting feeling as though there is the same sense of progress that we have seen today with the health reports and dentists is a tricky one. So, I mean, I have been invited onto the Improving Transport Board, which is encouraging. However, that hasn't taken place within the timeframe of this committee and has been delayed, I believe. I think the service and the transport service, I would hope, would commit to an improvement plan against the issues raised by carers. Now, there are some matters in relation to the procurement framework which are frustrating. So matters such as who will talk to a taxi company without causing confusion from that taxi company, or need to be sorted. Carers are the only people that know at 7 o'clock in the morning whether or not that child is able to go to school. So the social work staff will often work from 8:45 in the morning. So there is nobody to contact at the time that the taxi turns up at the school.
In that situation, if in the current situation, if it's not as far as an hour away, and a foster carer does take a child to school, are they able to claim standard mileage rate? Yes. Okay, so that is possible then. Did you want to come back, Tracy? I can see there's a...
It's a little bit more complicated than that, to be fair. Basically, a lot of children and young people come into foster care and are placed with foster carers who are quite a distance from their current school. And this is the cohort of foster children we're talking about who, when they first come into foster care, and there is research that it is better for them to stay in the school that they are, they know. It's one of the things that can remain consistent in their life when everything else is falling apart. But that school could be an hour away. Even longer, I've heard of some. Personally, I've experienced one that was over an hour away. That's not feasible for a foster carer to do that transportation and all the other things that have to be done. And that's if you've got just one young person or child going to one school. When you add into the mix, you might have multiple children going to multiple schools. It's just not possible. There would be, you could look at the option of a school nearer to the foster carer, and foster carers accept that a school within the catchment area would be their responsibility to transport the child to and from school as part of their normal duties. And in that situation, the child and young person also, I believe, has a better opportunity to attend extracurricular activities at school, make a social life for themselves where they can go to the park together or whatever. Whereas if they're an hour away, literally it's to and from school and that's all they get to do. So there is more than the funding issue here, but foster carers will absolutely transport children to and from school. And if it's within the catchment area, then my understanding is we don't claim that on expenses. It's part of our normal.
Thank you. That's helpful. Clearly not easy, but and also I have wondered this for some time. There is the principle that sometimes the school is the one place that's offering stability when, as you say, everything else is changing around a child. But it also perpetuates a relationship in a geography that may not be sensible for where they're being fostered. So I do wonder whether there's some flexibility in that, and whether there's an opportunity to think about with family and with child whether they move school. But I know moving schools is nightmarish and difficult and complicated. Councillor Hay, I'm sure you've got something much more coherent than I just said about that.
Thank you. I fully understand the need to keep consistency over a child's first coming into care. And I would fully agree with them staying in their current school if they're just coming into care and they're going into short-term care. But once they've been placed in long-term care, I believe it could work against that child, because they're not going to make friends in the area where they're living. And if they're not making friends in the area where they're living, that could be one reason why foster placements break down. Surely it should be looked on as to whether it's a long-term placement, and if it's a long-term placement, then it should be looked at whether the best thing would be to move that child into a catchment area school.
Good point, Councillor Hay. Steve, can you comment on that?
Certainly. I think one of the most important things to acknowledge is that it's so difficult to achieve a one-size-fits-all in this incredibly complex issue, which I know we're all aware of. My expectation would be, and Catherine's I'm sure would also be, that we would use the child social worker as that conduit and corporate parent alongside other support such as the virtual school service to try and consider the individual needs of each child on the basis of their own specific needs. So I am aware of some children who feel such a profound sense of belonging to their current school that has provided them with stability and friendships and teachers that know them and are sensitive to them and know when they're having a difficult day and when they don't, and the disruption in those relationships are profound. And then I'm aware of other children, of course, who have benefited immensely from moving schools and not being seen as the child with a stigma that was perhaps attached to them before and at the early side of their entry to care. I would hope that we, as a fostering service, work in partnership with the Child and Care Service and the virtual schools to consider each and every individual child. I think where the culture I would hope is also shifting is that where carers are raising that there needs to be an opportunity to really reconsider whether this child is at the right school for them, whether they are being invited to the same parties at the weekend, whether they're being invited to the after school clubs and everything that's important around that. That carers feel able to raise those concerns and questions with both their supervising social worker and the child social worker, and that we enter into an early review of their educational needs.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you support that flexibility. The question that Councillor Hay raised, though, was is there a shift in emphasis when a child goes into long-term care? Tracy's shaking her head.
Just to sort of clarify, short-term foster care does not mean short-term. Short-term foster care can be 18 months. So this isn't, and that's my personal experience, and there were probably others that could be longer than that. So it isn't necessarily what you would think as being a few months. It depends on what the decision is as far as whether there's a court process to go through. The court process is meant to take 26 weeks. It very rarely takes 26 weeks, more often much longer than that. And once there is a full care order, things do tend to change. I have seen situations where children have been listened to and they have gone to a school that they would prefer to go to because they can. The other element to bear in mind with location, and I'm not just talking about schools here, is there will be children who need to be away from an area for safety reasons. So it's important for them
that's-
to go to a school and
Yeah,
be in an
absolutely.
area that they don't have to worry about bumping
So-
into people.
Absolutely, and that was in my mind too, that there are some times when it's very appropriate for a child to move away from the area that it was in. So it seems to me this has got to be an organic decision that takes into account both what might benefit the child or young person most, and the fact that that might be against their natural reluctance to move from what they're familiar with and actually introduce them to a new situation that might be better for them. And I think that has to lie with a combination of the child's social worker and the child. And I hope that our fostering service is flexible enough to accommodate requests from a child or from a foster carer to say, I think this child would be happier in the local school if we could get them in. Having said that, I appreciate getting places in schools is not easy. So I think it's got to be, as you say, it's absolutely the opposite of one style fits all, because it's got to be mindful of what's going to be best for the child. We're a child-centered service and we need to do what's best for the child. So I think as long as we have the flexibility to make those changes, either to take a child out of its historic school and bring it more local to a foster carer, or the reverse, just leave it where it is because the child is happier there, and we see it's going to progress there, and it has all sorts of support mechanisms that make it right, even though it might be a long way away from where it's currently fostered. Sorry, I don't mean it in a rude way. It's just, I think as long as we can be sure the service is flexible enough to accommodate that, I think that's what we need to work for, whatever's best for the child. Do you want?
I would comment, I think the next meeting of this committee is focused on education. So I think the committee would probably welcome some follow-up to this, if not a definitive solution. We don't expect that would be unrealistic, but perhaps to know that there has been some progress made and meetings had and advocacies made. Thank you.
Right. Just another thing I wanted to raise on this report. Can I just say, I think this is a really helpful format because it shows the conversation between the Foster Carers Association and the service. And I really appreciate that. It shows that there's an ongoing engagement and that we're trying to do the best that we as a service can. In particular, one of the ones that I was concerned about was this whole business of savings. And I think it's, I as a child used to get threepence pocket money when I was tiny. And I remember my older sisters saying to me, we're going to set up a post office savings account, and we all did it. We all did it. And I just think getting children in the habit of saving for a future wish, something, you might have wanted to buy something specific, or you might want to buy a birthday present for somebody else. It's just the most basic principle. I think it's really important. And I wasn't, the only thing I was concerned about was this business of, it says the savings need to move with the child no matter where the child moves to. Yes. And then the most effective way is for the local authority to hold the account. But what I wanted to be sure about was that the child has agency. It's their, as far as I'm aware, is this their own savings, or is this savings that somebody is making on their behalf? Because if it's their own savings, the child needs to have some engagement with that. They need to be able to access that with the advice of a foster carer. No, don't spend it all on sweets or whatever. But that's the kind of thing we learn, isn't it, as children in a family? And so I just wanted to understand how that would work if the savings are going to be held. I think it's a good idea, but are we going to offer them a sensible interest rate and all of that kind of thing? And if it's held by the council, it sounds like a good idea. How are we going to ensure that young people have engagement with those savings?
I will answer your question to the best that I can, but I may make reference to Ranjit also in answering. The savings, there are two elements of finance that are provided to children and young people within care. There which are the pocket money element and the savings element. So the savings element are is the pot of money that we want to support young people with in preparation for adulthood, and when they are 18, which Ranjit can speak more to in just a second. The pocket money element is the allowance that's provided directly to the child, and then they are given financial mentoring, for want of a better word, by those that look after them, as you would expect with non-looked after children as well. So we have some carers who are incredibly proficient in setting up accounts and encouraging savings and setting up lemonade stores and everything along those lines. And you have some children that will receive their pocket money and be immediately down to the whatever shop to buy, invest in whatever hobby that they have. So what we would encourage as part of the journey to foster is to help carers think about how they're educating children and young people with how to spend their allowance. But behind the scenes, that savings amount is being added to on a weekly basis, so that when they turn into adulthood, they are not further disadvantaged by their child in care status, and have a pot of money for which they may buy driving lessons or whatever other investments this is in their best interest.
Do you want to come back?
Just in terms of collecting savings at source, which Steve's referred to, we are looking into that process where a child becomes looked after. From the moment they become looked after, we collect the savings for them, and interest will be added to that, so they won't be disadvantaged in any way. But it's a system that enables us to hold the funds in one place for the child, and when they leave our care, they will have that amount reimbursed to them. So it's a mechanism of actually capturing that saving for them consistently throughout their journey.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And the other one I wanted to raise was the point that's been made about finance issues. And I know this has been going on for a very long time. And one of the things I observe is that foster carers may be in the position where they need to complete a tax return. And so it's really important that the money for the child is separated from the money they are receiving as an income for the work that they're doing. So I'd kind of like to know what's being done about that, and whether I'd appreciate it's complicated, and I appreciate if it was set up in an unhelpful way, it might be quite difficult to unpick that. But can we bend our minds to that such that foster carers do get a proper breakdown of, do you get a pay slip? Yeah, Tracy, can you?
Happy to answer that. Yes, we do get a pay slip. We get a remittance advice every 2 weeks. And on there, it tells you what children you've looked after, what period the payment covers and what the payment is. Doesn't have a child's name. That's a bone of contention, because if you're doing emergency fostering, you can have lots of children coming and going and you haven't got a clue who you're getting paid for. But again, I don't know if you remember, Anita Hewson, previous interim head of service, set up regular meetings between the CFCA and the finance department. And actually, we had the most recent one of those just yesterday. And Sophie Jack is who we are dealing with, and she seems really excellent. And she is quite willing to look at some of these things to see how they progress forward. As far as tax, foster care tax is very different to your normal tax situation. Foster carers are not employed by the council. We are self-employed, and we have to fill out a self-assessment. And the government gives us tax relief that's very different to any of the tax relief that you get for any other role. And actually, it doesn't matter for the tax purposes about the breakdown of allowances and fees. It's actually more relevant for people to understand that there is an element, or quite a large element of that, the weekly fee, that is for your time as a foster carer, your skills, and an element that is for providing your child or young person with a home and everything that comes with it. So it used to be split out, and then it got changed. And actually, I don't necessarily think we need to be very formal about this. Foster carers just need to know what the split is. It doesn't need to appear on the pay slips. We just need to know what the split is.
Is there a way that, because I remember this, your predecessor as chair of Foster Carers Association raised the same thing. So this has been going on for quite some time. So is there a way that we can clarify to the foster carers, either just by information to them or by means of a split on the remittance advice, which bit is for skills and which bit is for providing?
I'm going to, if I can just give a very brief update. Steve and I have had a conversation about this, and we've got a plan. So from September, there's going to be a conversation held with foster carers on this, and Steve's got a really clear a plan of how we're going to take that forward. So I just want to give reassurances here today that this matter will be addressed, and we will come to a conclusion, and we'll set some timelines so you know that by a certain date, we'll be in a better position to give you the clarity that you want. And I apologise that you've had to wait for so long to actually achieve some of the things that you've raised today. In other local authorities that I've worked in terms of remittance, we've worked very closely with foster carers to look at the remittance fee and see what information is necessary for your good selves to have for your return. But in terms of, you've said that you might look after multiple children, we've tended to provide that information by providing an ID number. So if you wanted to clarify which child you were caring for, the ID number would come up on the remittance, so you would have, or as a local authority, would be able to verify that information for you at the earliest opportunity. But I'm more than happy to be part of those conversations. I'm sure Steve's doing a fantastic job of taking that forward, and your colleague from finance. But please do reach out to me if there's anything I can do to help and support, but we will take it forward. Thank you.
So, I know you'd raised some issues about that, so I think if you can take that forward with Sophie Jack and seek improvements to that, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, Steve, yes, do come back.
Thank you. Just to reassure the committee, so I have outlined a plan to the Executive Director and Director of Children's Services in terms of how to take this matter forward. Due to the nature in which the payments were first established and recommended, it is not possible to be equitable on behalf of children, to divide the current allowance simply by a percentage, to say that, for example, a carer contribution is 50% and a child's contribution is 50% because of just the way that it was set up. So the intention on the of the service is to reconsider the financial offer to carers holistically, ensuring that we have taken the feedback from the CFCA and other carers on how to address this issue. So it is taken very seriously. What we also want to do, we have 3 carer forums that are set up within September and October, because any conversation about foster care remuneration has to start with a foundation of trust and confidence, and that is what we are working very hard to develop on the basis of previous issues.
Thank you. So do we have a time frame for looking at that?
Indeed. So the conversation will begin with foster carers in September and October carer forums. It has been quite openly talked about within the CFCA committee, the need to review these allowances. The local authority has increased the allowances in line with inflation and provided an increase. But what we need to think about is what the needs of the local authority are, and when we think about our sufficiency strategy as well moving forward. So the intention is to begin the communication around the consultation around allowances in September and October, to receive feedback and to outline the plans that the local authority has in response to those feedbacks and in reference to the current budget allocated to foster carer fees. The desire is a powerful word, isn't it? The intent is to ensure that we are moving towards this in preparation for the new fiscal year. However, this is a significantly big piece of work that requires good consultation with carers and feedback, which will need to be very closely listened to and responded to.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
I think I can assume that this takes into account what agencies do, and if they do it better, that we acknowledge that and find a way of doing it, but certainly to compare. I'm sure we have hotlines to the other people's experience, if not their patients. So can we be assured that we are taking that into account?
Indeed. So in the plan that's been outlaid to the director and executive director, I make reference to 3 other local authorities and how they remunerate foster carers. And my background prior to working with the local authorities within the private sector, within commissioning arrangements, and considering foster care remuneration also. So I will be using that experience and knowledge as part of this. However, there are 2 quite strong themes and that don't necessarily marry as to how carers may want to be remunerated moving forward. One is based upon the needs of the child and the outlying support. One is based upon the skills and experience of the carer. So the important thing for us as a service is to really understand what carers feel will recognise their professionalism, their skills and their experience, whilst also meeting the needs of the child in so doing.
Much, Steve, and we've had a very thorough airing of that. So thank you very much indeed for both of you for contributing to that report and answering so many questions. And I shall be taking up with the retention working group, which I sit on, with some of the elements in the retention part. I won't bring that up here. Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to item 8. We've got the Cambridgeshire County Council's Fostering Service Statement of Purpose, and I think that is with you, Steve.
Indeed.
To introduce. Thank you.
I'm pleased to present the Cambridgeshire County Council Fostering Statement of Purpose. The Statement of Purpose is a document that's required as part of the National Minimum Standards around fostering, and 16.1 and 16.2. The reason why it's relevant to note those national minimum standards is it sets out very clearly the refined nature of the statement of purpose and its point in effect. The statement of purpose was put together in around February this year, an acknowledgement to the need to ensure that this is both public facing and prepared for in line with the impending Ofsted inspection, and also ensuring that any foster carer or child that sought to read the statement of purpose was able to access it. The statement of purpose is, of course, an evolving document and acknowledges, as you will recognise, some key officers within the report who are subject to change within both their roles and levels of sign-off. And as such, I would anticipate some small amendments to that report moving forward as well, which would then again be made public-facing. The statement of purpose outlines the aims and objectives of the fostering service, the culture that the service provides, and the various supports that are able to be provided to both children and carers who are members or access the fostering service. The statement of purpose in itself is not seen as contentious and is relatively similar to other statement of purposes provided within both the public and private sector, as all fostering agencies, as I stated, are required to have one. So I'm presenting this by way of information.
Thank you very much, Steve. And I note at the end of the discussion, we're just being asked for our agreement that it should be published. So members, have we any questions? Councillor Boulard?
Thank you. Just wanted to comment on 14, so on the EDI bit of the report. Well, tomorrow we have on the committees committee, we're discussing our whole council CDI action plan and update. And I was wondering if it's worth maybe mentioning like care experience, the protected characteristic, and the work that the whole council is doing on that. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with the statement there. I think it's fine to be published as it is. But when I was reading it, I thought, it was. I thought, why is that not mentioned? Because, for example, tomorrow in the committees committee, there's quite a bit on care experience as protected characteristic throughout the EDI's, the council's EDI's plan. So I was wondering, it's more of a comment. I was wondering what you thought about that and whether that should be included as a reference to it, and like a link to how this sits within, I guess, the whole council's equality, diversity and inclusion plan.
I think that's an incredibly helpful point, and I will consider that and make amendments to the statement of purpose.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions from members? I didn't have any questions. The only thing I thought was just a sort of, I don't know if it's a standard format for a statement of purpose, but I did wonder if this effectively which incorporates the introduction, was actually, as it were, a sort of forward, and then I was surprised that the contents came after that. I was expecting to see the contents at the beginning, but no matter. As long as it's possible to navigate our way around it. But I'm glad we've got one. We need to have one, so I'm glad we've got it. Thank you very much for doing the work to draw it up. And let's hope it's all satisfactory as far as Ofsted are concerned next time around. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Did you want to raise anything, Ranjit, about that?
I'd just like to say thank you to Steve and to Tracy for working together and finding solutions, and we look forward to the continuing journey to improve areas that you have identified over time. And I know Steve and the service are committed to making significant improvements on how we deliver services to our children and families with your support. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're being asked to endorse the Fostering Service Statement of Purpose for publication on the Cambridgeshire County Council website. And I'll assume we're all happy with that unless anyone indicates that they're not happy with that. Okay, so good. We've got unanimous agreement to that then. Thank you. So item 9 is the care leavers pledges. And this item is going to be introduced by Ranjit Chambers, the Service Director for Fostering, Adoption and Corporate Parenting. Ranjit.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. So this is the Care Leavers Pledge that has been formulated with the support of our care leavers and our participation team, along with the service. This document was shared in the last Young People's Corporate Parenting meeting, and they were very much keen for this to be progressed. So it has been brought to this committee meeting for consideration and any views. And if there's any further discussions that are required, we're more than happy to have a meeting outside of a committee to further discuss if needed.
Thank you very much. So at the outset, I think it's fair to say that those of us who are on committees where we constantly have to make sure that what we're endeavouring to do is smart, in the sense of measurable, achievable, recordable, monitorable, we might have some concerns about the way that the pledges have been phrased.
Okay.
But we're mindful that this has gone through the Young People's Children in Care Council, and it's been considered, and it is to some degree it's sort of a work between the young people and the service. Now, we as members might have some concerns about whether some of the pledges are entirely deliverable and measurable. But I think the way to deal with that, given that this is the young people have worked on it, I think the way to deal with that is, for my money, the initial recommendation is to endorse the care leavers pledges. I think I'd like to endorse the principle of the care leavers pledges. Perhaps not these exactly, but the principle is reasonable. And but then if we wish to have I was going to use circumlocution, but if we want to have a discussion with the young people about, do they think they're deliverable and how do they think we would measure them, then I think that's something we need to bring back with the young people. So I wondered, can I just check with Rishenda that it would be possible to sort of recommend the principle of care leavers pledges, but we might want to discuss with the young people the actual wording?
I was just going to look in the Constitution, Chair, because obviously the requirement is that any amendments to recommendations are notified in advance. So it is exceptional to do that in the meeting. So it would only be with, I think, probably with the consent of the entire meeting that you would want to do that.
Thank you very much, Rishenda. So, members, does anybody want to make any comments? I'm Councillor Boulat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do agree in a way, because when I was reading this, my first question was, where are we going to publish those and in what format, and who can hold us accountable over what we're publishing? Because I do agree with Councillor Branham's comment that it's more, for me, reading this is more about a vision, and having worked on many organizational visions before, it's kind of that vision statement, as opposed to like we 100% commit that this is deliverable and we can implement this. I think some are more deliverable than others, like looking at, for example, number 3 on housing. I think it's a vision that obviously we want to unlock as many doors to, appropriate housing education, but this is not really entirely within local authority control. So I think there are like many elements of this that really depend on so many other agencies or different layers of government that I do agree with the chair's comment that how are we able to actually word those as a pledge, which basically means a realistic promise as opposed to a vision. So thank you.
Councillor Hay.
I would like to go a bit further, and I totally agree with you that endorse the principle of care leaver pledges, but I would also like to ask for a report, say 3 to 6 months down the line, to come back to us showing examples of where we've actually fulfilled these pledges, because then at that time we could go fully into endorsing the pledges rather than just the principle.
Okay, thank you. So a report in 6 months' time on achievement. Okay. And Councillor Slatter?
Yes, thank you for your introductory remarks, Chair. I regret that it's not been co-produced with the councillors if this is our pledge. I'm quite prepared to work as much as I can with what we are being presented with, but it could be a very helpful exercise to sit down with the young people, as you suggest, and actually unpick some of this. I mean, you mentioned already the 3rd pledge, that includes so many different things that should be separated out. We already in this agenda have a report on housing for care leavers. That would need to be separated out from health and the other things. We may well be able to look at education in that context of care leavers at a future meeting, probably will be doing. But to have them all jumbled up together, to my mind, or at least combined, is not helpful for the young people to feel that we are answerable. And I personally cannot pledge to something I think is unrealistic. I really can't. It is a strange word to use for something that is certainly, as you say, more of a mission statement, is already being done, we hope, but we want to show the young people that it's being done and that it is what they're asking for. It must be a little bit more coherent. There must be more discrete pledges. And as you know, I've had a go at drafting that using their words, but separating out the things that need separating, putting together the things that are actually duplicated. So I think we can improve on the wording. I would be uneasy to have it going forward as a published document that we endorse. I really would.
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, I think for my concern, there are things that are, for example, Pledge 3 covers housing. That is being dealt with that is a district council sort of involvement. Health is the integrated care system. Education is us through, Department of Education and also our schools provision and as an education authority. And skills is to do with, engagement with work. So I think there's all sorts of things in there. But on the other hand, Pledge 2 simply refers to access to things, and that isn't easily deliverable. So it sounds like all of us are a bit concerned about endorsing the care leavers pledges as they stand. So Rushenda, you advised us with our agreement, we might be able to adjust the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I think just for your information and also for councillors, if I can just read from the Constitution exactly what the advice is. So the position is that no amendment may be moved at the meeting when prior notice has not been given, except where the chair may permit at their absolute discretion in exceptional circumstances and to ensure the efficient or proper discharge of the council's business, a further amendment or amendments to be moved. So that will be your judgment, Chair, if you consider that.
Okay, so I think I'll get to the succinct bit at the end. But my thought process is that my feeling is the committee would like to be able to endorse pledges, but they'd like to be able to endorse pledges that we think we're going to be able to deliver and monitor. So I'd like to perhaps consider a recommendation where we endorse the further development of the pledges in cooperation with the corporate parenting subcommittee or members of, or whatever, something that gives us an opportunity to work with the young people so that they understand why we want to support them, but this is difficult. Sorry, that's not very clear, is it? So can we say we recommend the principle of working towards some pledges that the with young people? Councillor Hay.
As I said earlier, I fully endorse what you're recommending, the principle of, but that's why I asked that in 6 months' time, officers could bring us a report so that we could then see which one of those is achievable. Because at that point, we'll be able to know, are they actually doing it, or is it just words on a page?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. Thank you, councillors, for your views. The pledge is a document that I want to incorporate into the corporate parenting strategy, which is due to be shared at a committee meeting in the month of September. So I would welcome a conversation and discussion outside of this committee meeting to discuss this further, so we can reach a position where I'm able to take that forward, if that's okay.
Members, are we happy that we do that? We come to agreement outside this committee about the actual wording. Thank you, Councillor Boulard.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just, I don't think anyone disagrees with the wording as a vision or the wider mission of the service or whatever you want to call it. I think the comments are around, okay, which ones can be delivered. So I guess even the wording as it is would be fine if we didn't call them pledges or promises, really. And then the report, as Councillor has suggested, in 6 months' time or whenever it comes to committee, can be, okay, what steps have we made towards number one? So let's say, I don't know, on 3 on housing, like what are the first steps that we make towards unlocking access to housing in collaboration with, say, district councils. So I think it needs a bit more detail, but maybe reframing this. I think part of a strategy or a vision document, it's fine without going into the detail, but then in terms of the committee purposes, I agree we need to see the actions and the deliverables of it.
Because the slightly tricky thing is, and I don't know whether the young people have understood this, but that for me, the word pledge means promise. And I don't make promises I can't be, I want to make promises that I can be sure to keep. So perhaps the other way around is, as you suggest, Councillor Boulard, rather helpful. Maybe we could ask them, would they consider reframing it as a care leavers vision or or our mission for care leavers, rather than pledges? Because we as members are accountable for the promises we make, especially if they're published on a website. Somebody might come to me in a year's time and say, Councillor Bradnam, you're the chair of the corporate parenting subcommittee, you promised to do this and it hasn't been done. So I don't know whether the young people in framing it, the fact that we haven't had any input into this is what's making us uncomfortable about it. It's asking us to promise to do something that we've had no input to. So I think sorry, Councillor Slatter, do you want to come in?
I agree with everything you said, and well, all the councillors. I think we're all in the same place in this regard. And I think we would like to have some pledges that we can waive in other committees. It's not that we don't want to do this, but I want to be able to point to a pledge number X in COSMIC in regard to education and skills. Because then it is something that if, as Ranjit is saying, it's been adopted and it is our, it is council policy, then it gives it power. And I think the young people will understand that if we explain it to them. We've just not been able to explain what we can do on their behalf and how. And I think that's what we would like to be able to do. And so to not use the word pledge would unlock, I think, a lot of the problems, the doors that at the moment we feel need unlocking. Thank you.
So can I ask, Ranjit, which do you think is likely to be most actionable, most effective, either to endorse the principle of care leavers pledges? Because also for me, there's when you just read that care leavers pledges, it sounds like pledges that the care leavers are making to us, whereas actually it's pledges that we should be making as a service to them. So there's that about it as well. But to endorse the principle of pledges to our care leavers, and then with the wording to be, can we agree the wording else outside the meeting?
I think it would be helpful to have a meeting outside to discuss further, and I think there's lots of different views here, which is absolutely fine, and I welcome that. But I think it would be helpful to have a meeting outside of this committee,
Okay.
so we can take it forward.
Okay. Can we? So we need to.
I'm more than happy to arrange the meeting so we can
Okay.
have further discussions if everyone's in agreement with that.
Okay, that's fine. So Rishenda, I just need to check. Oh, we seem to be in agreement that we want to amend the recommendation with everybody's agreement. Are you happy, members, with the proposal to endorse the principle of pledges to our care leavers, wording to be discussed? Yeah. Or something like that. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think, Chair, I mean, if you, are you going for the recommendation as being, we endorse the principle of care leaver, of pledges to our care leavers, and then as an action to discuss outside of the meeting in more
Yes.
detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishenda, for crystallising that. Thank you, members. Not easy, because I know that our young people have gone through a lot of workshops and work with officers, so I don't want to
It would be consistent.
absolutely, and indeed we all worked on the promises to our children in care, so it would be good that we were involved with that. Lovely. Thank you, Rishenda, for sorting us out on that and keeping us on the straight and narrow. Lovely. Okay, so item 10 then is, sorry, how long have we been going? Since 2, we're 3:30. Are we okay to carry on until 4? If we get to that point, I'll pause. Item 10 is housing for care leavers. So Louisa Kay, thank you, is the interim service manager for leaving care, and she joins us for this item and will briefly introduce the report. Thank you. Hello, Louisa.
Thank you for the introduction. So the report provides a brief overview to the work that has been taking place in the service over the last 6 to 12 months, specifically the development and implementation of the joint housing protocol for care leavers and the partnership meetings that have evolved from this. The purpose of the partnership meetings are to hold ourselves to account, ensure we are meeting the key objectives, develop ways to test out how we know the objectives are being met, or equally explore solutions to overcome any barriers together with our housing partners. This report is being shared for information.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm very glad that you've had as many meetings as you have with the various different district councils which are responsible for HomeLink and for the housing in our various districts. I know from my own part that South Cambs District Council was active in this, and whenever I've raised with them and said, are you making sure you're providing housing and making it possible for our care leavers to have housing, they said, yep, we absolutely understand, you know, and all of this. So that's very encouraging, and it obviously thank you for arranging those meetings. So members, do you have any questions on this report? I think we're all mightily relieved that it's so obvious that you're doing such a good job and working so collaboratively with the district councils. It looks like you've achieved. Oh, right. Okay, Councillor Slatter.
No, it's just congratulations, because I think we all know between the lines there's blood, sweat and tears in terms of conflicting interests with district councils, housing associations, etc. And also knowing that you can't guarantee that even if you did find accommodation, that it will work for that young care leaver. I think 2.3, the last sentence, is absolutely sort of vital, that we understand this as well-meaning councillors who may well have a care leaver in our division. Because we need to be realistic. It must start before they go anywhere near a property to view it as part of HomeLink. They need to have some grounding in, you know, I think South Cambs, isn't it, that's doing this preparation for tenancy. Well done, because that is key. And I'm sure that foster carers, you know, try and get that in as well, especially those who do the staying on scheme. So well done, everybody's working on this, because it is so important but so complicated. I did have a quick look to see if the City Council one was actually showing signs of this yet. It isn't just actually in black and white, but I know they've been in the meetings with you, because you've not, no district council stone has been left unturned, I think, by your team, and thank you for that. If I may be allowed a quick anecdote, outside the polling stations last Thursday, got chatting to one of the Homerton students. We'd had quite a reassuring number of students coming in, usually just before they go home or just after their last exam. This young man was staying on, and I said, oh, you know, why is that interested? I'm a care leaver, and they've given me the bill, you know, it came out in invitation. He's a care leaver, and he was allowed to stay on during the holiday by Homerton College. And I thought, must write to Homerton College and say, well done, because it just struck me that's another of the times when the children in care are in a different situation. So it's a happy story, I hope, and the sort of thing it shows also that he came from Wales, Cardiff. So there is also this cooperation among the authorities. If they're all signing up to this vision, then we can do business with one another. Though I was allowed that anecdote. Thank you for indulging me, Chair. But thank you very much. It's an excellent report, and I'll be able to quote from it and read it again several times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I can't see any other questions. So thank you very much for the report, and thank you for all the hard work that's gone into it. So
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Braddon, can I just say a few words?
Yes, do. Sorry.
Louisa, sorry, before you go, can I just say thank you very much for the great work that you've done to achieve the outcomes that you have for our care leavers. You've been working in this council for a considerable period, and you have moved mountains, and it's commendable. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so then moving on. So we've been asked to note that report, and no voting is required. So item 11 is a commissioning report on homes for children in care, and Lucy Munt, who is Head of Service for Children's Commissioning, and Gavin Mullen, the Commissioning Manager. He is obviously not joining us.
I think it's never just Lucy today.
Getting on camera.
Yes.
So thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about, I'm not sure if slides are going to come up or not. It did say to be confirmed, but I'm here to talk about Cambridgeshire's children in care population, specifically over the period 23-24 financial year, and focusing on the type of homes that those young people live in and how we commission them.
Ask Rashonda, have we got any slides?
The report presenter would need to share the slides if you've got them, and if members are willing to pause. we can
We
do that.
We can do that if that's helpful. Do you want to share your slides? It means you'd have to join the meeting, doesn't it? Do you want to go around and? Or we of course have them on our agendas or screens, so.
It's good practice for anybody watching from outside, but in the absence of that.
So I think if we don't actually have anybody taking part online, do we? So in the absence of that, I think members can look at their agendas that they've got. So if you just want to refer to the page number or the number of the report, the thing that you can.
Of course, no problem. Can I just check if you've got which report you've got? Is it just the slide deck? Because I think there was a couple that were issued.
We've got the full report, which is, hang on, it goes to page
It actually numbers the
129.
down the right hand side.
Okay. Okay, I'll do my best to talk through, but if there's any slides that I've missed or skipped across, then please
Okay.
let me know. So we're here to talk about the commissioning of children's homes and children's placements across children in care. Excuse me, and this report and these slides are to note, so they're not to vote. So it covers across, a various range of placement types, and you can see in one of the tables there that it talks about our different types of provision. So we've got foster care that covers both in-house foster carers and our independent fostering agencies, supported accommodation provision, children's homes, and the like. More crucially, what's probably best to add is we've got 50% of children's of Cambridgeshire's young people that live in foster care were placed with our in-house foster service, which is great, and the other half were placed with a variety of different IFA providers. Across 23-24, we saw 3 of our young people who were moved to secure accommodation, who were in secure accommodation, move out of secure accommodation into alternative placement types. We have 4 of 7 of our young people who were at the time of this report living in unregistered children's homes were in homes that were currently going through the Ofsted registration process to become registered. And the remaining 3 have other provisions which we're considering at the moment, other housing options for them, which are being considered. We also have a chart that's looking here with regards to those aged 16, 17, most of that cohort mostly are placed, as you would expect, in supported accommodation provision with additional support where required.
Is that chart 2?
Yes, chart 2. Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
During the period of 23-24, Cambridgeshire Homes we placed within homes 390 boys and 296 girls. Chart 3 looks at those homes that we've been able to identify, and it gives you the breakdown across those months of those placements. Chart 4 is looking at our in and out of county placement cohort, and you can see there's been a bit of a mix month on month, but actually 51% of our young people apologies, it's not 51%. I think it's 53% if you work it out, is actually out of county across that cohort. Looking at chart 5, so this talks about homes needed in an emergency. So emergency placements that we saw across the team were more often required for boys than girls, and the cohort largely is 11 to 15 age bracket. Chart 6 and 7 looks at the gender and the age of those. So over the last 3 years, we've seen a decrease in the number of breakdowns of our young people, although we do continue to see on average between 10 and 12 breakdowns on a monthly basis. And that's where we're working closely with our providers to identify how we can reduce that and increase our placement stability for those young people. So chart 8, 9 and 10 look at those breakdowns across the different quarters and then the age and the gender of those young people. chart 11 is looking at the average homes found for independent fostering agencies. So that's split by just fostering agencies in that 12-month period. And it talks about how we place these young people. So we talk around a DPS in this report, which is our dynamic purchasing system for children's external placements. And that's how we place our young people in independent fostering agency provisions. Roughly 5 in 6 children in 23-24. It made no difference in terms of how long their foster placement lasted, whether it would be an in-house foster provision or an external one through IFAs. Chart 12 is looking at the average homes found in a residential setting across that period. So in the most recent 2 years, we've used our DPS, our live DPS, for our residential children's homes for the young people that we can. We know that this is an area where we want to improve in terms of residential provision in and around Cambridgeshire, because we place an awful lot of our children currently out of county. I think that's the end of the charts that you will have got in this report. Is that right?
That's
Perfect.
right.
Good. Okay. And any questions?
So thank you very much, Lucy. I wanted to thank you for giving us this in-depth report. We've asked for this in the past because we wanted to know a bit more detail, a bit about the bones of where our children are and in what kind of provision. And this is it's a very helpful report. So just one question. I did wonder, on your chart 4, in or out of county, I wondered if I'd got that muddled up in my own mind. I thought you said we had about 50% of our children in county. Maybe you meant in-house. And I'm interpreting it as in county.
It's out of county. So we've got it tends to swing kind of month on month, but across the piece, just of all of our placements, it's around 53-54% that are out of county as
But
opposed
that's
to in.
not what this graph presents. If you take the pink and the yellow together, as it were, it sort of presents 150%. Well, yeah, I've got a strange coloration. So in county would appear to be, if you take it as March 2024, if that's just under 20%, and then the out of county is just over 30%, or is that numbers? You know, is that a percent?
Yeah, I can see the confusion. I think it's so at the time when the report was done, it was 318 placements were within Cambridgeshire and 368 were outside of. So that's why I paused when I said 51%, because I think when you work it out, it's nearer 53-54%. Yeah.
Okay, righto, thank you. Members, did anybody else have any questions on the report? Councillor Hay, Councillor Slatter? Yep.
Well, I'm going to try and carry out our promises. And there's several of them really that affect homes. And we'll be honest with you and explain if we're unable to do something we said we would do. Sometimes that can be to do with homes. And we work to keep you in a supportive and caring environment where you feel safe and happy. It's obviously to do with homes, as well as lots of other things like foster carers. Is there anything that's worrying you that's making it difficult to keep these promises, or might in the future? Because we need you to raise the issues, having given you the job of presenting what's going on at the moment. If not here, then through proper channels.
Yeah, agreed. So in terms of concerns, so certainly since I've joined the council, there's been a lot of improvement work done, particularly around working with our provider base, how we manage the provider market, provide more stability around our cohort of contract managed providers. So where we've got contracted providers, and the national sort of provider base, working both side by side to ensure that what we've written into our contracts, what we've pledged within our contracts, our service specification, that is being met within the service providers. So I am confident in that.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And as you say, it's just for information. So we thank you very much for your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So item 12 is going to be presented by Chris Leach. Oh, Raoul, okay. Thank you. So it's a report on children missing from care. Actually, I've got Tom Watt, Acting Head of Service. Is that Raoul? Okay, thank you.
Just bear with us, Councillor Bragman.
So I think we're waiting for which one? So if anybody's watching online, we'll just, oh yes. Does anybody want to pause? Oh, we're almost there, aren't we? Do we want a 5-minute pause? Yeah, let's have a 5-minute break now while we wait for Chris Leach to turn up. Okay, so I make it 10 to 8 minutes to, so should we say gather here at a couple of minutes before the hour? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so after a short wait, we're back at item 12, a report on children missing from care. And we've got Chris Leach, the Adolescent Services Manager, will introduce the report, supported by Tom Watt, Head of Service for Adolescents, unless it's the other way around. Do you want to go ahead?
Great. If I start off, if that's all right. That I'm the acting head of service for youth support services, which covers youth justice, as well as the wider adolescent service. And we've gone through a process over the last year or so about rationalising the work we're doing and the way we're doing work. So adolescent work sits very closely alongside youth justice. There's a lot of commonality in terms of the children that we're working with. And then more recently, we've brought the Missing, Exploited and Trafficked Hub, who do the work with around return home interviews for children who are missing, into the same area as well, alongside the work we do around exploitation with the risk outside the family home. So there's a whole emerging area there. So they all now sit in the same area around youth justice. Within the Met Hub, we do return home interviews for children who are missing in general, not just those who are missing from care, but for the purposes of today, the focus will be about children missing from care. I'll pass on to Chris to talk about the detail.
Very much. Yeah, Chris. You go ahead.
Yeah, and you will have seen from the report that we are building from a positive position. So the Ofsted feedback around this area of work was good, but we recognise from our own audit work that there's still plenty we can do to improve the service that we offer to children who are missing from care. And there are a number of steps that we're taking in relation to some changes we're making around return home interviews, the ongoing involvement of those Met Hub workers in the care planning for children, and a number of wider pieces of work around risk outside the home, which will also have an impact on the children in care population, as well as those who are living at home.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members on this report? Councillor Slatter.
This probably should have given you warning. It's only just occurred to me. Apologies, but I would like to know, just as member of Children and Young People's Committee, how many young people you're dealing with in the county as a whole, just in terms of capacity and the skills base you've got, and as well, because I know there's cooperation being you, but I'd just be interested to know how many young people are in this situation in the county.
So are you asking how many children and young people go missing?
Yes.
Yeah, so I haven't got the
okay,
detail of the whole lot, but we could certainly provide that.
I think it would be useful to understand the number of children who go missing who are children in care versus the number who go missing in total. That might be helpful.
Councillor Bradman, I think some of that is answered in the scorecard that was shared today.
Yes,
correct
I
me if I'm
thought
wrong.
that. The information that we had, there was, hang on, let's just have a look. Missing from care, because there's a context for child in care.
In general
Here we are.
terms,
Here we are. It's
Oh, yeah.
page 37. So this gives us a very detailed breakdown as missing from care episodes and children missing from care and children missing from home and missing from home episodes, but it doesn't actually compare us with, for example, all children in the county missing. In other words, how do our children compare to children who are not in our care in terms of the rate of absconding?
yes, we can certainly look into that. I don't
Yes.
have that information
Hard
now
to
because we need to compare it to the whole population of children. I understand what you're asking, but yeah, I haven't got that data for you now.
I don't want to send you down a rabbit hole, but it's really just, to give me some idea, in your email inbox, how many young people, that, over that weekend are going to need this sort of really skilled help, which I'm confident is fine for the children in care,
But what about the others is
Yeah,
also a concern, because we know how vulnerable they are to all manner of things.
In terms of return home interviews that we carry out, approximately a third of those will be for children in care, and 2/3 of those children not in care. So that's the return home interviews that are offered as a consequence. So it's not the full detail of exactly children missing from home for short periods of time. There's a certain designation, but that's roughly the
So
the detail.
1/3 is children in care, 2/3 is children out of care. Okay, but that sort of makes sense, actually. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And what we are aware of, which is what you said right at the outset, is that 532 episodes of children going missing, but for 115 children in care. So clearly there are some children who are absenting themselves very frequently, whereas others it's just 1 or 2 occasions.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the vast majority have 1 or 2 missing episodes, and then there's a small number who have a very large number of missing episodes.
And they must be at risk of all sorts of other.
Yeah, and yeah, often they are the children who we're also worried about in terms of exploitation in other ways. Sometimes not. Sometimes, yeah, they're one young person in particular who the missing episodes appear to relate to kind of trying to reconnect with family members or friends from areas that they lived with previously, where we're not particularly worried about exploitation. But yeah, often that is the case.
And looking back at that chart reminded me is that there are more children going missing from home versus from in care. And I just wanted to check, forgive me if that's not your area of awareness, but if it is, when that says missing from home, does it mean from residential homes, or does it mean from some other kind of home?
I think it refers to children who live at home.
Yeah, yes.
In family settings, although they could have gone missing from anywhere, if you like. So they could have gone missing from school or from home or from, run away from their parents, wherever. But yeah, that refers to children living at home.
So this is effectively connected care, isn't it?
Yeah, well.
Sorry, just to be clear. This one. Yes. So if I this may be difficult for you to understand if you haven't got the agenda in front of you. So page 37 of our agenda is a table children missing from home and missing from care. And one of the questions I meant to ask when we were on this item was, what is the difference? What do you mean by missing from care and missing from home? What are you going to be able to answer this?
Yeah, the difference is essentially the care status, the legal care status that they have. So a young person who is Section 20 accommodated or is subject to a care order, for example, would be missing from care. Missing from home would be those who don't have that legal status, so aren't within the cohort of children in care that the 600 or so that we designate or we've identified across the local authority.
But I assumed that all of the children in this chart are missing from care of one type or another. But you're saying it's not children missing from home and missing from care is, what are the children missing from home then? Is that the total Cambridgeshire missing from home who aren't in our care?
Exactly, yeah. So a child missing from home on
okay.
here would be a child who's living at home with their parents, let's say.
Not in care.
Not in care.
Okay.
It's clear when you look at it on the screen. You've got the blue.
No, it's not anything to do with the colour. It's to do with the definition of what from missing from home and missing from care means. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Right. So I don't think anybody else has got any questions on that. So thank you very much for a very thorough report, so thorough that we didn't feel we needed to ask you for any further clarification. And can I congratulate you on recognising that that connectedness of the different services that are going to be able to work together to make sure that our children are safe. So thank you very much, and all credit to those who thought it was a good way of reorganising it. So thank you very much. And we'll move on. Thank you very much indeed. So the final parts of our agenda. Yes, sorry. We've been asked to endorse the ongoing work to develop the service offer to children who go missing from care. So are all members happy to support that recommendation, or would anyone prefer to move to a vote? Are we all happy to endorse that? Thank you. That looks like unanimous. Thank you, Rashenda. So item 13 is on page 135 of our agenda, the subcommittee workshop and training plan. So I'll ask Ranjit if there's anything she'd like to draw our attention to.
I think the only thing they wanted to draw to the training plan was that there's a further offer for the therapeutic training in the month of September. The dates are in the documentation, and we would welcome members to participate. It's going to be delivered by a virtual school, and if we could have confirmation of of members that can attend, that would be appreciated, so we can make arrangements.
Is this item 23, supporting mental emotional health? That's right. Yeah, okay. Can I put my name down for that?
Wonderful.
Please? Thank you. Any other members keen? I'm sure you can contact the service separately, or Rashenda.
Thank you.
To ask. Councillor Slatter.
Yes, this is something we discuss in the member development committee as well, in really great concern for those councillors who have commitments outside during the day, and the difficulty attending, and the massive commitment of officer time that is involved in a thinly attended in-personing. Now, I recognise that for those of us who can get to a location and meet real people, it is wonderful. But I would like us to put some design, thinking into having some combination of those things. Because if we have venues where we can be on camera, and so the people who see it on record can see the officers presenting what they do and introducing themselves, and it's on record, that is immensely useful, and not just for those who couldn't see it in the first place, but those who want to revisit it. Similarly, the attendance can be seen as, casting aspersions on those councillors who aren't free to go to the sessions as planned, and yet would gladly and maybe are attending it on record. I don't think we can actually track who's looking at things. Yes, the recorded version. Yes, I don't think we can actually check who's looking at that, but not unsurprisingly, there's a little bit of of hurt feelings there, shall we say, because they show up badly. I've had that said to me anyway, and I wanted to pass it on. And if we have got officers who do a great job and may well be working away from one of the hubs that have got the cameras, they can make a contribution and it can go on the record. Just a little bit of choreography required. And I think, because I feel, that we're otherwise missing out on people getting the benefit of meeting those officers, even virtually. And that's coming up in quite a few of these that are meant to be on site, as it were.
Also, can I check with you on item 21, education transport? I thought we had something like that in November 2023. Or are we looking forward to it coming up in November 2024 or again?
I'm not sure about that, Councillor Braddon, because I think I joined at the end of November. So
okay.
Was it offered in November, you're saying, and you want to know if there's a repeat of it?
I thought we had some training on education transport. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't do it in November 2024, but I wondered if that was actually previously delivered in November 2023.
Okay.
Again, I'm saying it might be useful to do it again, but I just wanted to check whether that was correct. So looking forward to all of that training, because it's always so interesting. And we've got those dates in our agenda plan, so that's excellent. That's our training plan. So then if we look at the agenda plan, and if there was anything else, if we look at the agenda plan, we've got this meeting, we've got what we've got today. Does anybody have anything they think ought to come to a meeting in September, or obviously the meeting in November is, the theme is education, and there's the sort of standard suite of reports. Did you want to?
So,
refer to that?
Councillor Bradnam, one of the things that we've missed today is our placement stability report, which we
Okay.
did touch on today. So we would like to bring that to the next meeting,
Okay,
if at all possible.
so to the November meeting.
Is that the next meeting?
Yes,
November?
yeah,
Okay, so it'll
13th
come
of
to the November
November.
meeting.
Placement stability.
Placement stability.
Okay, and also we'll need to think about the pledges.
We'll also bring the pledges. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Hope we can do the work in between time. Good. Anything else, members? No. Great. Okay, so thank you very much. We've made some just adjustments to the agenda plan. Thank you very much. So that concludes today's business. The subcommittee reserve date is, as we briefly mentioned, Wednesday, the 4th of September. So please can you just keep that penciled into your diaries, sorry, or however you do that on an electronic diary. And officers will be in touch to confirm if we need that date or not. Okay, did you want to raise anything else? No, okay. Tracy, did you want to raise anything else? Thank you very much then, members, for attending and your contributions. They're all very, very welcome. Thank you so much. Okay, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 4:15. Thank you.